Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're taking a plunge into a book that really shook things up in the self-help world. Mark Manson's The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Feck. If you've ever felt, just overwhelmed by all the pressure to be positive, constantly positive, and amazing all the time, this one's definitely for you. We're going to try and pull out some of the really potent ideas from this book. It's super direct, very insightful.
Absolutely. And our goal here is really to get into Manson's core message, which is honestly pretty counterintuitive when it comes to happiness and figuring out what actually matters. It's not about just not caring about anything, right? It's not apathy. It's more like a really careful, deliberate way of prioritizing, helping you sort through all the stuff, demanding your attention, and focus on what's genuinely important, where to invest those limited, fucks, as he puts it.
Yeah, he definitely doesn't hold back. The style is just so direct, no fluff, and it's full of these insights that really challenge, the standard self-help advice. Feels kind of like a reality check, maybe, but helpful one. Okay, so let's dive into one of the big ideas right at the start, this don't try philosophy, and alongside it, something he calls the backwards law. He introduced it with the story of Charles Bukowski. Remember him? The poet, kind of an alcoholic, struggled for decades. Just rejection after rejection, dead-end jobs. Then, bam, age 50, small publisher takes a chance, finds success. But the really weird part, his tombstone just says, don't try. What is that about?
Right. It seems so contradictory. But don't try, in Manson's view, isn't about giving up. It's deeper. It means stop desperately chasing some idealized version of success or trying to be someone you're not. Bukowski's success came when he basically accepted himself, warts and all, accepted being a quote-unquote loser, and just wrote honestly about that. He wasn't trying to be a literary star. He was just being Bukowski. And that perfectly shows the backwards law.
Which is
the idea that actively pursuing a positive experience can, paradoxically, make the experience negative. But accepting a negative experience can actually be a positive experience.
Okay, hang on. So trying really hard to be happy makes you less happy.
Exactly. Think about it. If you're constantly desperately thinking, I need to be rich, what are you reinforcing? The feeling that you're not rich right now, that you're poor. Or if you desperately want everyone to find you attractive, you become hyper-aware of every perceived flaw, making you feel uglier. The more you chase it, the more you feel its absence. It creates this loop.
The loop. That sounds like his next point, the feedback loop from hell. I think a lot of us can relate to this one, especially now with social media constantly showing curated perfection. It's that feeling of getting anxious because you're feeling anxious, or getting mad at yourself for being angry, or guilty about feeling guilty. You layer bad feelings on top of bad feelings.
It's incredibly common, and he calls it the feedback loop from hell. And it's dangerous because it stops us from just feeling what we feel. Society kind of tells us, hey, negative emotions, bad, avoid. But Manson says the way out is, again, counterintuitive. You have to short-circuit the loop. How? By accepting the initial negative feeling, by essentially not giving a fuck that you feel bad. Fuck. When you stop judging yourself for feeling anxious or sad or angry, the loop breaks. It's about acknowledging that, hey, sometimes life involves feeling bad, and that's okay. It's inevitable.
So not fighting the feeling itself, but stopping the judgment about having the feeling.
Precisely. Just letting it be there. Okay, I feel anxious right now. Full stop. Not, oh no, I'm anxious. What's wrong with me? It's removing that second layer of self-criticism.
That makes a lot of sense. And it ties into another core idea, right? That life isn't about eliminating problems. He says problems never really go away. They just get exchanged and or upgraded.
Yeah.
He has that great line from his character, Disappointment Panda, something like,
yeah, Warren Buffett's got money problems. The drunk hobo down at Quickie Mart's got money problems.
Right. Buffett's just got better money problems than the hobo. It's such a memorable way to put it. Life is about getting better problems, not no problems.
And taking that further, happiness doesn't come from a life without problems. Where would the growth be? Happiness, according to Manson, comes from the act of solving problems. It's an ongoing process. It's something you do, not something you just, find passively. Think about it. Solving a tough challenge feels good, right? That's the happiness. And he points out two ways people usually mess this up. Denial, pretending problems aren't there.
Which just leads to more insecurity down the line.
Exactly. Or the victim mentality, blaming everyone else, feeling helpless.
Which feels powerful for a second, maybe, but leads to bitterness.
Right. Both avoid the actual solving. They offer these temporary highs, he says, but ultimately lead to more misery.
So, what about emotions in all this? If we're supposed to accept negative ones, are they always right?
Not necessarily. Manson views emotions more like feedback, like signals. Negative emotions are basically a call to action. They're saying, hey, something might be wrong here. Pay attention. But they aren't infallible truths. Just because something feels bad doesn't automatically mean it is bad for you, or vice versa. Think about exercise. It can feel painful, but it's good for you. So feel the emotion, acknowledge it, but then question it. Don't just blindly obey it.
Okay. Problems are inevitable. Happiness comes from solving them. Emotions are signals, not commands. So this leads to a really fundamental question he poses, which is, what pain do you want to sustain? Because everyone wants the good stuff, the easy life, the pleasure. But real fulfillment, Manson argues, isn't about avoiding the pain. It's about choosing which struggles, which pains you're willing to endure for something you value.
Yeah, this is a huge one. And he uses his own story, wanting to be a rock star. He loved the idea of it, right? The image, the stage, the applause, who wouldn't? But then he realized he didn't actually love the process. The endless practice, the hauling amps, the dealing with club owners, the rejection, the struggle of it. He didn't love the daily grind that leads to the rock star outcome. And his point is, his failure wasn't lack of talent, it was that he didn't love the struggle itself. That's what defines you, he says. Who you are is defined by what you're willing to struggle for. If you only want the reward without embracing the effort, you're unlikely to get there.
That really forces you to be honest with yourself, doesn't it? Look past the shiny goal and at the actual work involved, which kind of connects to another one of his slightly bracing revelations. You are not special. He talks about this character, Jimmy, the kind of stereotypical wannabe entrepreneur, all talk, tons of confidence, zero results, just pure entitlement.
Right. Jimmy is the embodiment of this false sense of specialness. Manson argues that our culture today, especially with social media showing only the highlights and the extremes, it makes being average feel like failure. We're constantly bombarded with the exceptional. So this creates what he calls the tyranny of exceptionalism. It makes regular people feel inadequate or drives them towards this kind of empty entitlement like Jimmy. But real self-worth, Manson suggests, isn't about thinking you're amazing all the time. It's more about how you view your flaws, your negative aspects, and your willingness to work on them.
So accepting that you're, well, average in most things is actually freeing. It takes the pressure off.
Exactly. It's liberating. He argues true greatness often comes from people who don't think they're already great. They think they're average, maybe even inadequate, but they're obsessed with improving. That humility fuels the drive. Accepting you're not exceptional frees you from that constant need to prove you are. You can just focus on getting a little better. Enjoy the ordinary stuff, which is actually most of life.
Okay, embracing imperfection, accepting mediocrity in a positive way. This seems to link directly to responsibility. I love his marathon analogy for this. Running 26.2 miles, it can be this amazing achievement you trained for, or it can be absolute torture. What's the difference? Whether you clunked it, whether you feel responsible for being there.
That distinction is critical. Responsibility versus fault. Fault is about the past. Who caused the problem? She broke up with me. It's her fault. Responsibility is about the present. What are you going to do about it now? Okay, she left. It's my responsibility to deal with my feelings, rebuild my life, find happiness again. You might not be at fault for what happened to you, but you are always responsible for how you respond. Always.
You always control the response.
Always. And he gives great examples. William James, the psychologist, basically decided one day to act as if he was 100% responsible for everything for a whole year, called it his rebirth, led to huge breakthroughs for him. Or think about Malala Yousafzai. She wasn't at fault for being attacked, obviously, but she chose a response of advocacy and strength, taking responsibility for her reaction. That's powerful. He also warns against the opposite, what he calls victimhood chic, people who constantly adopt the victim role, sometimes over minor things, to get attention or feel morally superior. It's another way to dodge responsibility.
Wow. Taking responsibility, even when it's not your fault, is where the power lies. That's a big shift in perspective. And it seems related to another point he makes about certainty, that being too sure of yourself is actually bad.
Yeah, he argues that certainty is the enemy of growth, which sounds weird because we usually crave certainty. But Manson's point is most of our deeply held beliefs are probably wrong, or at least incomplete. History is full of things people were certain about that turned out to be totally wrong. True progress, personal or societal, comes from being willing to question yourself. From embracing uncertainty, asking, what if I'm wrong, is way more powerful for growth than constantly trying to prove you're right. Our values should be like hypotheses, things we test with our actions, ready to revise them based on experience, moving from wrong to slightly less wrong.
So if certainty is the enemy, and we should embrace uncertainty, how do we move forward? How do we actually do anything?
That brings us to the do something principle. It flips the usual script on motivation.
With the novelist story, the guy who wrote, what, 70 books? His secret was just writing 200 crappy words per day.
Yeah.
Just doing something.
Exactly. We usually think first comes inspiration, then motivation, then action. Manson says that loop can start anywhere. Critically, action can create inspiration, which then fuels motivation, leading to more action. Don't wait to feel inspired. Just do something, anything, even badly. The act of doing, the action itself, becomes the spark. When you make doing something the metric, failure doesn't stop you. It's just feedback. It actually pushes you forward because you did something. That's how you try out new values, how you grow. As he says, life is about not knowing and then doing something anyway. Okay, so when you put it all together, this subtle art isn't about apathy. It's about being incredibly intentional with your focus and energy. It's about consciously choosing what gets your attention, what you genuinely care about based on your own well-considered values. Choose better things to give a fuck about. You get better problems to solve, and that leads to a more meaningful life. It's work, for sure, a discipline, but maybe the most rewarding kind.
And for final thought, maybe the most profound one in the book, he brings in death, our own mortality. He argues that because death is the only absolute certainty we have, it should be our ultimate compass, the thing we use to orient everything else. Thinking about our limited time here kind of forces us to confront what really matters. He suggests real happiness often comes from caring about something bigger than just ourselves, seeing our lives as part of a larger story. That perspective, facing our own end, tends to make all the superficial worries, the entitlement, the small stuff, just seem trivial, doesn't it? It is definitely a lot to think about. Really makes you examine your own priorities, what struggles you're choosing, what you're certain about, maybe too certain, and encourages you to just, well, do something. We hope this deep dive gave you some useful things to consider from Manson's work. Thanks so much for joining us today.